Then there's the question of Al-Qaeda, right? What is it? Is it this demonic force? That's one version. The BBC then said, there's no such thing as Al-Qaeda. Well, there is Al-Qaeda. And what or my standard phrase in my books is, it's the CIA Arab Legion, it's dupes, patsies, fanatics, double agents, mercenaries, and what have you. And Al-Qaeda, in that sense, is capable of blowing up a supermarket or a bus, but not the Twin Towers. But of course, what they're doing in Syria today, what they did in Libya 2 years ago, is very much on the supermarket and bus level, right? So the Republicans are saying the U.S. Air Force doesn't want to be the Al-Qaeda Air Force. It's really the other way around, that Al-Qaeda is the NATO infantry. Al-Qaeda is the NATO infantry, and it's been used in Libya, Syria, Yemen, Algeria, Mali, Somalia, Iraq, and so forth. And Pakistani and Afghan Taliban, fresh from fighting the U.S., are now being shipped into Syria, where they're being armed by the CIA to fight Assad. Denounce these facts. Get the word out. Who is the evil genius of this phase? Now, this is not 9/11, but the current phase, this charming gentleman, right? Bandar Bush is the way you probably know him, right? Prince Bandar bin Sultan, the boss of Saudi intelligence. He's the prime suspect of the Goutha chemical attack. He's the one who provided the gas. And we're even talking now about a third, earlier event, which is the Aleppo chemical event of March 19th. Russia now has a 100-page report, which seems to be in the hands of McClatchy News, where they show that the sarin gas was used by the rebels. And this is the authoritative one, because this has all the rules of evidence and the chain of custody, and it follows all the rules of the enforcement organism of the Chemical Weapons Convention. A couple of other things that you probably don't know. A couple of journalists, Pierre Pichinin of Belgium and Domenico Credico, a reporter for La Stampa, the main newspaper of Turin, Italy. It's the Fiat the newspaper. They were held for 152 days by the terrorists in Syria. And they actually say they were more like brigands, bandits, organized crime, mafiosi. They were held. And what they report is that when they were in one room, there was a general from the Free Syrian Army in the other room boasting that his forces had successfully carried out the Goutha chemical attack. That's what they said when they got back. And you can see that on the internet. You can see Pichinin saying so in French. Credico, a much weaker guy, he was leaned on. So they've stopped talking about this, but that's what they said, okay? Here is a person that I hope you get to know. This is Sister Agnès Mariam de la Croix. This was the person who made possible my trip to Syria in November of 2011. She is the Mother Superior of the Convent of St. James in Kara, Syria. It's about halfway from Damascus to Homs. And what she's recounting is that the children, the child victims that are displayed in the videos, the dozen or so videos of the chemical event, are not people from the Damascus suburbs, but they are Alawites. They're Alawite children kidnapped by the rebels in Latakia on the Mediterranean coast 2 weeks earlier. So the rebels grabbed a bunch of kids, killed them somehow, and then used them for the photo op to make those videos. That's what Kerry and Rice want to help, those butchers. And this is, of course, the same method as the Nazis. This is the Gleiwitz radio station, Operation Canned Goods. You get people, you kill them in the way that seems to be the way you want. Wait to the end, huh? Unless it's...
Well, I was just going to say, if it had been sarin, there would have been people vomiting all over the place.
And not only vomiting, I don't want to go into this too much, but uncontrolled defecation is one of the terminal symptoms. So you don't see any of that. So it's a fraud. And she is writing a report, and well, it may be possible to make her influence felt in the U.S. Congress, because all this stuff is, everybody agrees that Assad carried out this gassing. No, no. And remember, from 9/11, you've got to recall this. If you grant the enemy the premise, you'll get the consequences. If you say, oh yeah, we accept 9/11, but we don't like war, you'll get war. And if you say, oh yeah, Assad gassed his people, then you're going to get war. That was the genius of 9/11 truth, that we don't accept their premise. Carla Del Ponte of the United Nations also found a couple of months ago, the rebels are the ones who use the poison gas. Now, here is the point that I want to try to develop today. Here we have Professor Lance DeHaven Smith, right, from Florida. He writes about conspiracy theory in America. This is a rather friendlier book. He says the whole idea of conspiracy theory being bad is from the CIA in the late 1960s. So it's a very interesting book. But here's the point that I think is important. You cannot consider covert operations or false flags one by one. No, you must consider them as part of a continuum, because it's a series. You can't just say, I do the Kennedy assassination and not, 9/11, or the other way around. No, that's methodologically bankrupt. You can't do it. Sorry. So you've got to study the continuum. And if for no other reason, right? Here we are, we've got the 9/11 anniversary, but of course our calendar is dense with false flag anniversaries. We've now got the Kennedy 50-year anniversary coming up in November. So what do we make of this? I think it would have been good to get Joan Mellon or somebody else like this, right? Some expert on the Kennedy assassination here to try to get that process going. But don't expect left liberals to help us on this, right? The Oliver Stone Kuznick movie, or Klutznick, as I like to call him in my local dialect, the Oliver Stone Klutznick Untold History of the United States, right? That's my North Queens dialect. The history of the United States. Oliver Stone felt free to attack the Kennedy assassination myth in the movie JFK because it's a work of fiction. But when it comes to making historical, factual assertions, he doesn't make any. If you saw that on Starz television, it was on cable TV, right? And what was the explanation on Kennedy? Kennedy had powerful enemies. Yeah, well, but how about the CIA operations directorate and all those people, Alan Dulles, Richard Bissell, whatever? No, not a word. So Oliver Stone has gone backwards away from attacking the Kennedy myth, and of course he never had anything to say about 9/11. So nothing on Kennedy, 9/11 accepted. Stimson, we'll get to that in a minute, is whitewashed. And here's what this comes down to. The left liberals are afraid to risk their own careers and social standing and whatever by going into the non-respectable realm of conspiracy theories. Of course, for some of us, it's too late. Right? And instead, what they do, they don't want to risk their careers. They blame the American people. They say, oh, that great unwashed mass, they're racist, they're chauvinist, they're ignorant, they're this, they're that. Yeah, how about some organic intellectuals to lead, right? Some intelligentsia in the Russian sense. So this, I'm afraid, doesn't get us anywhere. Here's what I would like to point to. Here's a continuum. Now let's just tick them off. The USS Maine in 1898 gives you the Spanish-American War. The McKinley assassination gives you the annexation of the Philippines and the founding of an empire. Sarajevo is not exactly the US, it's really British Freemasons starting World War I. And then with Roosevelt, and I'm gonna have Roosevelt all through the talk. We have the assassination attempt against Roosevelt in 1933. Then we have the Morgan coup, right, the one you know, Smedley Butler, the Dick Stein Committee. That's 1934 to 35. But then we have the attempted coup by Van Horn Moseley, 1937, and the von Siatsky coup of 41 to 42. And finally, we have the assassination of Franklin D. Roosevelt. That is my finding. By Wall Street, by the British, by fascists, reactionaries, and so forth in the US establishment. Right? And this is the big one, because this then puts the entire history of all of our lives under the shadow, not just the post-Kennedy, but the pre-Kennedy. So the killing of Roosevelt by poison, the Kennedy assassination, 1963, the Gulf of Tonkin, 1964, Martin Luther King, 1968, Robert F. Kennedy, 1968. Watergate. Now, Watergate, many people wouldn't see it this way, but Watergate is a CIA Office of Naval Intelligence operation to attack and weaken the presidency. And the House organ was Washington Post, which is the newspaper of the Federal Reserve System. Always interested in a, yeah, they were. That's how it was founded. It was founded by Eugene Meyer. The family's now selling it. Eugene Meyer bought it to fight Roosevelt and to fight the demonetization of gold. He was a gold bug. We have 2 attempts on the life of Gerald Ford, right? Sarah Jane Moore and Lynette Squeaky Fromm. Then we have Hinckley trying to kill Reagan in 1982. We have Iran-Contra in the mid-'80s, 9/11, and now we have the Arab Spring, Egypt, Libya, Syria, and so forth. Now, that's a continuum. That's not even the whole continuum. Right? Those are just some of the most dramatic moments. It's quite a history, huh? The suppressed history. It's the way this faction has expressed its desires and demands. Now, what can we make? Can we make some generalizations about the continuum? I think we can. We can, first of all, recall that Kennedy was assassinated, as I said before, by the CIA Operations Directorate. And Garrison, of course, on the right track, but then sabotaged and surrounded and cut off, while the great left liberals, of course, wouldn't do it. But here's the common basis, is that none of these events is for the good. They're all for the evil. They all promote evil. They promote war. They promote oppression. They promote genocidal austerity. They promote union busting. The people who get killed are generally the adversaries of Wall Street banks. It's not a question of, William Tell, right? William Tell in Switzerland wants to kill the occupiers, right? He wants to kill the tyrant Kessler in Schiller's famous play. It's not that. The people who get killed are good or better than average, and the good one and the bad ones are left untouched, and it's actually amazing. And the consequences are bad. So from that continuum, we can deduce that there's a social formation behind it, and we can see what the policies of that social formation are. And surprise, it's called Wall Street. And their program is war and killer austerity and the crushing of the American people, the crushing of unions, the crushing of independent political activity, and so forth. And that's ultimately what you have to deal with.